Hello everyone and welcome to another scrapbook layout process video. You'll have to excuse my voice at the moment. I have a little bit of a heavy cold and I feel okay apart from the fact that my head's a bit heavy and I can't stop sneezing. So I'm hoping I can get through this scrapbook layout process video because what I want to bring you today backs off on another video that I just did recently using this Weekend Adventures paper and the stamp set. So I'm sorry for the glare. I've got this in page protectors because I've done my flip flap and everything on this. And after I created this layout, which is for a workshop that I'm running, and then I did the cards that the ladies are doing as well, I had some leftover pieces. So I wanted to create another layout with it. And I'll bring the cards in at the end of this process video. So what I've got are some strips of paper left over. And I know on the one that I just brought in, I'll have a link to that video below, it looked like there were strips, but there were actually pieces of paper there that didn't go all the way through. So this one, I'm thinking I'm going to do a fairly simple design. And between this layout that I'm doing today, the one I've just shown you, and the cards that I've created, I'm going to get 2 double page spreads, and I'll also have 4 cards as well. And I'm a bit excited to bring the cards in because it's using a very cute new stamp set. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do is lay my pieces out like this. I could swap these over, but it's got acorns in here, which is not really relevant to the photos that I'm thinking of putting on this layout. This one here has the blue, and I really like that, but I like this side of the paper more, and I know I've said this before with this paper pack. So for me, this is really the hero print. This one is a close second, and then these ones are like supporting prints. Now, this might bother some people here because I didn't have quite enough of a piece of paper here to cut a full length of this. So I am just going to butt these up against each other. I know that the stripes don't match up, but I'm hoping what I'm going to do is going to camouflage that a little bit. Now, because I've got these pieces running along here, I think what I'm going to do is top them off with 1/4 inch strips. Now, I could use the black side. There's basic black in this pattern, but I think that might be a little bit heavy here. So I'm going to flip this over because our basic black cardstock is two-toned, which is wonderful. So you get this deep sort of charcoal type color, and I'm thinking that I'm just going to put these just to give these a little bit of a grounding strip here at the top and the bottom of this. And I am going to adhere these down and try to actually adhere them nice and straight. I was thinking of doing this a little bit differently, but I'm not sure if it's going to work. So maybe what I could do is stagger my pieces of paper here. I'm going to bring in some photo mats that I've done. This is the true basic black side, and I'm going to use the charcoal side, as I've said before. Actually, I quite like the fun of this. So what I'm going to do is put my photos out on this side and see what I like the most here. So the big thing with this is to cover it up somewhat. And then between whoever's watching this and myself, we'll know that the stripes don't go all the way through in the exact pattern. But I'm thinking that I prefer this sort of a layout to this one. This is a bit too structured. So I am going to change what I thought I was going to do already. So I'm just going to make sure that these bump up and down across my layout and create a little bit of fun. And then when I put my photos on the page, I'm still going to have this one that's going to span across that seam that I've got there. I'm really liking how that is looking. So I think I'm going to go with that rather than everything lining all up perfectly and having a strip across it. So when it comes to adhering these pieces down, I always start on the outside piece and then work my way in. I'm not really measuring anything here. I'm just eyeballing it, making sure that I have my pieces somewhat straight. I can get my T-ruler out, but I might not in this instance. And then I can bring in these pieces here and get the equal distance. So this is around 1/4 inch. It might be just a little bit less. And when it comes to staggering these pieces, I just want to make sure that I don't have things at the same levels at all. All of them are going to be different, but on each individual page, I want these pieces to be different. So let me see if I've got that about right. I think I need to move this one over just a little bit. It's always good not to press too hard when you first do something that I forget all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere these pieces and put these up together and put my photo placements on, and then I'm going to come back with all the fun bits of the stamping and the decorating. I've got everything adhered down here on the layout so that I can start moving things around and deciding what title I'm going to do, and I've got some other embellishments I'm going to bring in. And I think this one I'm going to use the Party Alphabet dies, and instead of having them all lined up, I'm going to stagger them across the page so that they will fit across the left page here. And I've got some pieces left over from the cards in the other layout that I did for the workshop, and I'm thinking it might be sort of fun to cut some of the letters out of these titles. So when I'm looking at this, I want to make sure that I have my letter around the right way, and I'm going to bring in some cardstock as well because I don't quite have enough pattern paper here to create all of the patterns. I've only got these 3 pieces, so I don't want to have this pattern on top of each other. So I'm going to be a little bit strategic and lay this out here. And I've also got some leftover pieces here from making the cards. So what I'm going to do is go through and space all of these out and die cut the letters. And I'm going to be pretty strategic about how I cut out my letters because I don't want the same letter cut from the same paper here. And I will have a workshop guide up for this one. So that's a little bit different from my scrapbooking guides. My workshop guides usually have scrapbook layouts with cards because they're the instructions that I provide at workshops. So that is the difference between the two. I am working on a Weekend Adventures scrapbooking guide, which will be separate from this one. So I'm going to mix these up quite a bit and have a multicolored title, and that's going to help create the fun that I've got with these staggered strips here, having a bit of a staggered title as well. I've got all my Party Alphabet letters cut out. I like that I've been able to use up pretty much all of the pattern paper from the 3 sheets of pattern paper that I've got in their kits. So I've got that all laid out. I want to stamp a little subtitle here from Weekend Adventures, and I'm taking the scenic route down in this section here. So because I'm doing this direct onto page, I'm going to flip this over, and I am going to do a little test first because I think I'm going to do this in basic grey rather than using the brown. And I think that is going to look really nice up against this black pattern paper here. So I'm going to bring this in, make sure that I ink this up nicely. So with photopolymer stamps, I can look through to make sure that the ink is looking like it's covering that stamp image perfectly. And then I'm going to take my time, let the ink soak into the paper. If this doesn't work, I can always create a little banner strip or something like that to put on there, but I like how that looks on there. So I'm going to stick with that. I don't need to change that at all. And then I've got some other elements I'm going to bring in from the Label Me Grateful dies. I didn't actually buy the stamp set for this one. I just wanted the dies because I like all the leaf elements on this. I think it's a really good set for bringing in and decorating pieces, and I've used those on the cards that I'm going to bring in. So I've got a couple of little trays here that I've cut out from Old Olive and Early Espresso, some of those leaf elements. The Old Olive I have used the light side and the true colour side for, so I'm going to just place some around. And the reason why I've got some brown ones here is because I know I want to do some depth to this. I just think if I just use Old Olive, it might be a little bit flat. So what I want to do is mix up what I've got here, sprinkle them around my letters. So when I adhere my letters down, I'm only going to adhere a little bit of the letter down because I can go back later with my glue and adhere the rest down. But I do want to just place some of these around so you can see where I'm heading with this. I'm just going to move these out of the way. Then I'm going to mix up the darker side of Old Olive with the lighter side as well. So I can have some coming out here, and then where I've got those, I can tuck in some of the Early Espresso ones and just create little clusters. If I wanted to, I can snip this apart. So let me just do this. And then I can tear this little leaf apart, and then I can have one sprig coming out like this, and this one where the edge isn't quite correct, I can hide partially under that leaf. I sort of like that separation there for that. I might do that with this one as well. And then I think what I'm going to do is just put some coming out of this area here. And this time I'm going to use, I've got light or dark there. I think I've got the light. So I'm going to bring in the darker shade of this leaf and tuck that in. So it's just building this up without overwhelming the page. I know I've got 4 spots on here. So my title is like one big element here. So that to me is one large cluster. And then I might just put a few more down in this section, just framing around this scenic route. So putting them down around this section here is just going to help frame out this scenic route and just making it look like it's not really just sitting there without anything to support it. I just want to be careful of what colours I'm using, mixing up my light and darker tones of the old olive. And then I've got these fine little ones here that I'm then going to bring in to just accent this just a little bit more. So it's just a case of moving things around. I know that's 4 in that element, but because there are 2 leaves here, I think that groups that out quite nicely. So I am going to fiddle around with this just a little bit more and then adhere all these pieces down. I don't think you need to watch me glue everything down for this. And I did forget to mention that the bases here that I'm building on are the light side of Basic Beige. I really like the softness of this for outdoor photos. So I think what I'm going to do now is just adhere these elements down and then possibly come back in with just a couple little more of these elements just sprinkled in amongst my words here in various places. That's too matchy with the other one. So I think this is going to look really cute when it's all put together. I need to tweak this a little bit and everything's going to move around. The other thing you want to pay attention to when it comes to adhering things down is to take the ones from the back first. If you can hold this piece with your fingers and then just lift that out, that makes it a little bit easier. But even if you have to move it aside, it's sometimes better to take out the one at the background first, and then I'm going to adhere this one because that's the next bottom one, and I'm going to make sure that I go over the top of this cut here with this one. And I know I said I'm not going to show you all of them on camera, but I thought you might like just a couple of tips with how I go about adhering my clusters down. So see how I'm putting that on here so that it covers up that awkward little cut there from where I separated those 2 elements. And then while you're adhering the glue to your actual embellishment pieces, it's sometimes good to put a little block on there or a couple of stacked blocks so that the glue actually goes to the paper, because these have a tendency to curl up a little bit. I haven't actually put adhesive right to the edge corners of my photos, which makes it easier for you to be able to lift those up a little bit so you can tuck the leaves in and under or whatever embellishments you're working on. So they're just a couple of my tips for how to actually adhere your clusters. I'm going to get busy and do the rest of this and then I'll be back. What I'm doing with my letters here is just applying a little bit of adhesive in the center part of my letters so that I am able to lift these up and put them down, and then I'll be able to go back in with my glue later once I've got all my little leaf elements on there and adhere those down to the page. So it is just a little bit of fiddling around with this, but it does make it easier if you use an adhesive that doesn't adhere straight away, and you'll be able to lift these elements up so that you can then adhere more glue later, but you've got the ability to be able to tuck your leaves or whatever embellishments you're using in and around them. So at the moment, these letters here just have adhesive in these middle areas. So I'm going to continue with the rest of the letters, and then I'll use glue to adhere the rest of my pieces. Now, I know I said before that I wasn't going to have a pattern paper up against a pattern paper, but when I was die cutting them out, that's what I ended up doing. But what I can do with this is tuck my E somewhat under here, and this is the advantage of just putting a little bit of adhesive in the middle here. So this bottom section of my E here is providing a landing place for the bottom here of that end, so that's worked out okay. I've got everything adhered down now, and I'm adding some details to my title, and I wanted to show you what I've done here. And I've also brought in the adhesive back textured dots. I think these might be my all-time favorite pick for outdoor photos. I just think that they just add a nice little bit of texture without overwhelming the elements. Now you might be able to pick up here, I've done some very loose lines on my letters here. I started trying to go around the outside of them and being all nice and careful, but that is something that I probably should have done before I started putting all these leaf elements underneath here. Because that has added some bulk, it has meant that I can't get really nice, straight, smooth lines. And if I'm honest, I really can't do straight, smooth lines around circle elements and curves and things like that. So what I'm doing for this is just adding a little bit of detail. I'm not taking a whole lot of care here. I just want to add some detail to these letters just to give it an even more sketchy sort of look. And they don't all have to be at the bottom section of the letter here. So I'm just coming in. I'm hardly pressing with my pen at all. And I'm just doing a few little lines on each letter, even where there's pattern there and you can't necessarily see it all. But I think just by doing this on the actual letters and adding some sketchy lines on there, it just adds to the fun of this page. And that's what this page is going to be all about, because I've got the staggered elements here. And my photos here, even though they're nice and straight, they're not all at the same heights. These two here are, but the rest of them are different heights. And just by adding this onto the page, I think that works really well. So what I'm going to do now is just go all the way around the outside of this. I'm not trying to keep a straight line. That's going to be virtually impossible for me. So, and then I need to put little bits here. And then when I stop some places, I'm going to add some of those little sketchy lines. And I probably should have thought about this before I had it over the top of the other one. So you can see I've gone into the edge here. So just embrace that when you're doing something like this and add little elements to make it look like you meant to do it on purpose. I know some people need to use a ruler to get everything perfect, but that's not what this page is all about. So you can see I'm mimicking the sketch pieces here that I've got on my lines, and I'm loving the fun of this. So I'm going to do that over on this side as well. It doesn't take that long to do. I just need to make sure that I've got enough room for my hand to flow along. And if I go a bit wonky and if I go off the edge of the page, I can just add some more of those little scratch sort of marks just to add a little bit more of a feature. And when I get to something like this where an embellishment is, I just lift up and go around it. I don't try and draw right up along the edge of it. So now I'm thinking, do I do this onto my pattern pieces at all? I think that's going to be enough of the pen work. So this is just a brown Le Pen that I've had for ages from close to my heart days. So that's my finished layout for that one. I'm going to bring in my cards now that I've done. And I've used such a fun stamp set. Well, actually 2 fun stamp sets. So I've got Long Time No See with the llamas, and I've got Not 29 Anymore with some of the sentiments. I've got 4 of them made up here, and there's a little bit of a process with this. It's all to do with rectangle strips. They're all at different sizes. So I've used the llamas on some of these, and for those of you that like colouring, this is a lovely set to colour in. It's pretty easy to do. There's little areas here where you know you can add a deeper colour and shade it up a little bit, and the scarf is a lot of fun to colour in. So I've got the sentiment from Not 29 Anymore, older but still cool. I thought that was a little bit cute. I have used some linen thread on all of these. This one here, I've used this die here from the Label Me Grateful dies, and I haven't used a leaf on this one, but I've done them on the other ones here. So I think this is quite a versatile set, even without the stamp set here. So I've got twine wrapped around the bottom here, and I've just stamped one of the little llamas off the edge of this die, and I've used those same textured dots here. and then a little strip on the inside. This one here, I've used the sentiment, I don't know about you, but I feel like you're not 29 anymore. And then happy birthday on the inside. This little element here is from the Weekend Adventures set. So that's this little one here. I've just used it at the top and the bottom here. And this shape here is the Heartfelt Hexagon Punch. I thought it would be fun just to bring that out. It just seemed to fit that sentiment really well. So I've used that on the card. And then I've got more of the leaf die cuts and a little circle jumble here of the twine. And then I've got 2 llamas here. I decided I didn't want to colour them all in grey. This colouring here is a little bit of a stipple sort of effect where you do a little bit of colouring and then you just bring in and do little dots around here like that. So it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but it gives the texture here that I think is really cool on this little llama. And I have used my alcohol markers, my old Spectrum Noir tri-blend markers. I haven't got all the Stamping Up colours yet, and I still have a whole range of those Spectrum Noir ones, so I'm still using them at the moment. So out of 3 sheets of pattern paper, I've got these 4 cards, I've got this layout here, and I've got this one as well. I'm really happy with how far these 3 sheets of 12 by 12 paper have stretched to create what I think are some very interesting and fun scrapbook layouts. And also, of course, some really cute cards here. If you're interested in the guide for this, I will leave a link for that below. It's going to be a workshop guide as opposed to a scrapbook guide. My scrapbook guides have more than just 2 double-page spreads. This one, on the other hand, is a workshop guide because it includes scrapbook layout with cards as well. So that's the differentiation between the 2 types of guides I do. The next one I'm going to be working on as a full scrapbook guide is this Weekend Adventures Designer Series paper with the actual sticker sheet here. I've used the scrapbooking kit that Stampin' Up put out and I absolutely loved it. And I love working with these colours and these papers. So I had to get the sticker sheet with the paper pack as well so I could make up a scrapbook guide for that. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed watching me put this layout together, essentially from scraps from what was left over from this layout here and the cards. Happy crafting, everyone. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.